Welcome back. Rain Durham's Nothing But Truth. Hey, you want to help children suffering from malnutrition and blindness because of parasites and disease? Well, you can do that. And we are teaming with World Concern to do just that. You see, your gift of $44 will go to World Concern and will cure and care for 100 children infected with parasites. That's 44 cents a day that you can care for one child and open up the door for them to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so how do you do that? How can you take it? You're always looking to take action. And I know you all because you're incredible. You were wonderful in our latest share-a-thon. You always step up because you understand that the government, let's just say our money doesn't always go to where we want it to go. We don't have a lot of say over it sometimes. And so when we have an opportunity to help people directly, we take it. And that means $44 to World Concern. And that will cure and care for 100 children in the third world. 800-700-8084, 800-700-8084. What's that number again, Crane? Glad you asked. 800-700-8084, or give online at afr.net. World Concern, $44, helps 100 children infected with parasites and also gets them to the gospel by the ability to share. Give online, afr.net. Our guest, he is the author of Inside Gitmo. He is the author of Separated at Birth, How North Korea Became the Evil Twin. He wrote that book, incidentally, in honor of those who had fallen in and served in the Forgotten War, what's been called the Forgotten War. So who better to talk about respect for our troops than a man who's had the muddy boots, the sweaty armpits. He's been a Green Beret, and he has also been a very frequent guest on this broadcast, Colonel Gordon Cucullu. He is currently dedicating himself to helping veterans today. And first off, how are you doing that, Colonel?
Thank you, Crane. Great to be on again with you. And we're doing that. My wife and I have set up a nonprofit called the Valhalla Project. And we've got a 200-acre tract here in the North Arkansas Ozarks, not far from you, actually. Mm-hmm. And what we do here is bring in soldiers to post 9/11 combat soldiers primarily who are looking for a place to decompress, to get their heads back into society. And we help them in a lot of ways with new skills or, with just being able to relax away from the stresses of the civilian world that are pretty extreme for people who have been downrange, and to transition back to a normal civilian life as much as possible. And we've had really great reception with the soldiers who have been here. They can stay for up to 3 months. They can come back at a future date if they feel like they need it. And we also welcome soldiers who don't feel like they have especially problems but want to help their battle buddies and those who are going to come after them, because none of us feels or, is naive enough to think that this is America's last war. Mm-hmm. So we're building this for not only for today's soldiers but for our future generations too, so that we won't have the kind of situation that you referred to before where we, in the post-Korean War, for example, where veterans simply became anonymous and fairly unappreciated. We appreciate these guys. They took care of us while we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we want to give back a little bit to them.
Well, we appreciate you, Colonel, and over time we'll continue to discuss that or what you're doing, and it really highlights the point of why you're not only a national security expert and I would say a historian, but you'd probably reject that and say no, but I would say yes. You may call yourself an amateur historian. I'll call you a full historian. Bottom line, when we talk about national security and the freedom that we enjoy, we have to remember that the people at the tip of the spear are those who are serving or carrying out the mission of actually protecting us. And that means blood and sacrifice and mental turmoil, a whole host of things that they face, great tumult to say the least. And so I always want to keep that in mind, especially when we speak about the commander-in-chief, not about R's or D's, but it is about a worldview. And the president was asked about Syria the other day, and he invoked, well, a reason for not acting on the red line, the crossing of the red line. And here's what he had to say, just a portion of it, and I wanted to play it for you. Roll it.
I would note, not to answer the question that you lobbed over to President Park, that you suggested, even in your question, a perceived crossing of a red line. The operative word there, I guess, Stephen, is perceived. And what I've said is that we have evidence that there has been the use of chemical weapons inside of Syria, but I don't make decisions based on perceived, and I can't organize international coalitions around perceived. We've tried that in the past, by the way, and it didn't work out well. So we want to make sure that we have the best analysis possible. We want to make sure that we are acting deliberately.
Colonel, when you hear that from the president, and then he goes on, and I'm just going to play the next cut for you because it does go right into it. He, in essence, blames Bush back at that, but it says, we're not acting because we just don't have enough information. And then he goes on to say, what about your credibility? Well, my credibility is bin Laden and Gaddafi. Roll it.
But I would just point out that there have been several instances during the course of my presidency where I said I was going to do something, and it ended up getting done. And there were times when there were folks on the sidelines wondering why hasn't it happened yet, and what's going on, and why didn't it go on tomorrow? But in the end, whether it's bin Laden or Gaddafi, if we say we're taking a position, I would think at this point the international community has a pretty good sense that we typically follow through on our commitments.
All right, Colonel, you've heard that, recognizing that this is not a rush to war, invade versus do nothing. There are many steps in between, but also recognizing that you can save a lot of lives if you act clearly as opposed to waiting. Your thoughts on the president's approach to Syria and, for that matter, the war overall?
Very odd. On the one hand, he says we have evidence, and then he says, but I don't act on perceived. So, the man speaks in riddles, and he likes to do platitudes because it makes good sound bites, and it gives his cheering section something to yell about. But basically, it was his red line. Nobody made him adopt that. If he didn't want to get involved, he shouldn't have put the red line up there. But he put the red line up there. Obviously, it was crossed. He said there had evidence that, that chemical weapons had been used. Begs the question: where did the chemical weapons come from in the first place? And the answer to that is Iraq. But that's a whole different discussion point. And so here we are with this guy still beating his chest about Gaddafi, where we were, quote, leading from behind and quite proud of it, which is a very strange oxymoronic statement in the first place. And now he's abrogating any sort of leadership on Syria, simply saying, well, we need to analyze it more. There's more than 70,000 killed in that civil war so far, and so we're and candidly, Crane, one of the things that is, I think, part of the smoke and mirrors of this whole Benghazi episode is that there are strong indications that one of Ambassador Stevens' missions in Libya may have been to facilitate transfer of weapons to the Syrian opposition, something the administration has never acknowledged or, refuses even to answer questions about. Mm-hmm. So I think this whole question is extremely confusing, and it's it's deliberately made more confusing by a guy who doesn't speak straight, but who likes to speak in as I said before, in sound bites and in catchy metaphors.
Colonel, rather than play the clip from today, I know you know what happened in exposing the stand-down order. We don't know who exactly is going to make that call. In your opinion, one, who do you think made the call to stand down? Does that ultimately come from the president? Two, what does that message send to not only the people that were on the ground, shock, dismay, outrage, but also now people now serving, that their government would have the resources to protect them, stand down?
Well, the first question on the stand down, we have to assume that it came from at least the presidential or the secretarial level. Mm-hmm. If it didn't come from President Obama or someone very close to his, who was in his acting on his behalf, then it had to come from a cabinet member. Leon Panetta says it didn't come from him. That kind of points a finger at the Secretary of State, then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. I'm hoping that these hearings will get to the bottom of some of this, because we've got some questions out here that really need answering, Crane. And the fact that the Democratic leadership is in lockstep right now, and unfortunately a lot of the media is going along with this, that this is old news, it's not something we need to dig out again, and, let's just get past it, and, this, that, and the other thing, shows to me that it's quite damaging to them, and that for all his bravado speaking in soul in those first clips you played, we sure don't see any of that in the Benghazi episode. Quite the opposite. I mean, it's a muddled, confused, tragic episode that resulted in the worst attack we've had on on an embassy since the Iranians took down our embassy in Tehran in the 70s. As far as the second part of the question, I'll try to deal with that quickly. I think Greg Hicks, in his testimony today, if any of the listeners heard it, was very poignant about that, is that it's telling everybody who has served or who is serving now that if you get in trouble, you're hung up to dry. It's always been a cliche in the intel business, that from the old Mission Impossible days, the secretary will disavow all knowledge, that kind of thing. And there are certainly operatives who work with that.
Yes.
But not at the ambassadorial level, not
Absolutely.
At the embassy security level.
Colonel, thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time. We'll get you back on, obviously. But thank you for being with us. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Live with honor in your life, compassion in your heart. Always keep the faith in Jesus Christ. AFR Talk.